In what could be a masterstroke for India's ambitions to become a major defense exporting nation, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited has revealed plans to export made-in-India Su30 fighter jets to friendly nations. Now, these are the same fighter jets that made US Air Force F-15s wish they had taken a sick-day leave instead of dogfighting it. India is the only country that manufactures the Su30 outside Russia, and Indian Air Force is the largest operator of these fighter jets with nearly 272 in service. Su30MKI is a highly capable and versatile fighter jet and can dominate even the latest flying machines out there. In friendly war games, Indian Su30s have dominated British Eurofighter Typhoons 12-0 and US F-15s and F-16s over 90% of the time. Now, we will tell you all about these dogfights in just a minute, so stay with us. HAL has now begun talks with Sukhoi's parent company in Russia for a larger agreement on co-production and relevant technology transfer. The news comes days after Prime Minister Modi successfully concluded a state visit to Russia, where the two sides agreed to boost their defense cooperation. A source told Financial Express, quote, HAL is in active talks to build these fighter jets at its Nasik facility. Russia, the original manufacturer of the Sukhoi jets, has agreed to support this production effort, reinforcing the strategic partnership between the two countries, unquote. Now, the HAL would be looking to export these jets to ASEAN nations, including Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia, who firstly use Russian-origin defense equipment and secondly need to boost their own defense capabilities given China's expansionist salami-slicing ambitions. Russia, meanwhile, is currently facing issues in defense exports, especially due to sanctions imposed by the West on Moscow and the CAATSA threat to any potential buyers. Now, the US CAATSA, or Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, aims to discourage countries from buying Russian defense equipment. However, an export agreement with India would see made-in-India Su30s find their way to the international market. India has been the world's largest arms importer since the 1990s, and Russia has been its biggest supplier, accounting for nearly 60% of all imports around 2010. Now, this share has dropped to around 35% now as India seeks to diversify its imports given Russia's tensions with the West. Still, Su30MKI remains the crown jewel of the Indian Air Force and time and again has won in aerial duels in friendly war games. In 2015, the Indian Su30MKIs beat British Royal Air Force Typhoons 12-0, that is 12 victories and 0 losses in head-to-head dogfights. All these encounters, however, were designed in within visual range category. But that's not a one-off victory. IAF pilots in their Su30s even trounced US Air Force F-15s and F-16s. The first was in the COPE India 2004 exercise held in Gwalior, which even generated quite a stir in the US Congress, after it emerged that the world's most powerful air force, the USAF, lost 90% of their duels in their F-15 fighter jets against Indian pilots in their Sukhoi-30s. Once again, all the dogfights were within visual range category and numerically favored hosts Indians. However, US Air Force pilots had trained for this and were reportedly overconfident despite being aware of these odds. However, once the exercise began, there was only one-way traffic as Indian pilots won 90% of the combats. The skill and tactics of the Indian Air Force had caught the American counterparts off guard. Colonel Mike Snodgrass, who was the commander of the USAF 3rd Wing, was reported saying, quote, "The outcome of the exercise boils down to the fact that they ran tactics that were more advanced than we expected. They could come up with a game plan, but if it wasn't working, they would call an audible and change tactics in flight," unquote. Of course, in modern warfare, much is dependent on beyond visual range missiles and stealth aircraft. However, once any rival fighter jet comes close to an Indian Su-30 for within visual range combat or dogfights, then usually there is only one winner. US Air Force Colonel Greg Newbeck had said back then, quote, "We've seen in the last 2 weeks is IAF can stand toe-to-toe with the best Air Force in the world. I pity the pilot who has to face the Indian Air Force and chances the day to underestimate him because he will not be going home. They made good decisions about when to bring their strikers in," unquote. The next face-off was in 2005 at COPE India exercise between Indian Su-30s and US Air Force single-engine F-16 fighter jets. The F-16s were from the 13th Fighter Squadron based in Japan. According to reports, once again, in head-to-head dogfights, the Indian Sukhoi came out on top against the American F-16s. The third time the two air forces went head-to-head was in Red Flag War Games held in Nevada in 2008. This time, reportedly, the US F-15s had the edge, though according to reports, Indian defense sources claimed they had no data link in these exercises and had to rely on verbal communication. Either way, Indian Su30MKI flankers have gone up against the best air forces and 4+ generation jets in the world in friendly exercises and mostly come out on top. In one-to-one dogfights, there is no better fighter jet in the skies, and now India wants to export this fighter jet to friendly nations in partnership with Russia. India has total expertise in manufacturing and overhauling the Sukhoi 30. HAL not only builds the new Sukhoi 30s for the Indian Air Force, but the Nasik facility has also overhauled over 100 of these fighter jets. Earlier this year, the DRDO and HAL began a 60,000 crore rupee project to upgrade Indian Air Force Sukhoi 30 fleet with modern radars, electronic warfare capabilities, mission control systems and integration of modern weapons. Indian Air Force plans to operate this jet at least for the next 2 decades while it boosts its squadron strength with indigenous fighter jets including the Tejas Mk1As and Tejas Mark IIs, along with the 114 MRFA program. While the brand new Tejas is yet to make a mark in the international market and has not bagged any export orders yet, the proven and lethal made-in-India Sukhoi 30s do provide the country an opportunity to boost its exports as India has ambitions of transitioning from the biggest arms importer to a major defense exporting nation. Meanwhile, United States sees India as a key strategic ally in the Indo-Pacific and often frowns on New Delhi's ties with Moscow. US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan even cautioned India that Russia has become a junior partner to China and Moscow may side with Beijing in any future conflict. Still, India has chosen to maintain its decades-old relationship with Russia while nurturing the newfound military ties with USA. So should India go ahead with Russia for the Sukhoi 30MKI defense export plan? What do you believe? Leave a comment, hit the like button and subscribe to Inconnect News for daily news and updates.